different sort of scales, yes? And with the same phenomenon, we just can look at it from a slightly different lens. So we started to to get this idea. I gave you this worksheet to work on the levels of organization, yes? We started with and the idea, the reason that we use a pyramid or a triangle is to sort of reinforce this idea that we start off with the very small and sort of zoom out, yes, and keep zooming out. All the way through, though, we're looking at biological phenomena. So starting with, remember, yes, we did a couple of these. At the very apex, what should you have here at the level, the smallest scale that we can look at? Yes.
The subatomic particle.
The subatomic particle. If you recall, we started part of this, correct? Together. All right. Then you had to list 2 examples of subatomic particles. Can someone give me an example? What examples that we gave? Nate. An electron. Emma, another one. Proton. All right, very good. Then we move down. We sort of zoom out. Yes? So an electron, a proton, a neutron, any of those would have worked. We zoom out. Once we have subatomic particles, yes, we can combine the subatomic particles comprise a what? What's the next scale that we can look at? Yes, Emma. An atom, very good. So an atom represented by one of the elements, yeah? So we can spend time looking at the sort of elemental composition of organisms. Can someone give me an example of an element? I know we talked about it. A hydrogen atom, yes. Anything else?
Carbon atom.
Carbon atoms, nitrogen, oxygen, any of those would have worked, yes? Very good. From that perspective, we move out. Once we have atoms, we can combine atoms to form what? Yes, tell me your name again.
Derek.
Derek. Yes. Molecules. You can give an example of a molecule we expect to find in organisms.
DNA.
DNA, another one. Yes? Anybody else? Nate. Carbon dioxide, water, any of those would work. Yes? When we look at that basic level, yes, when we're looking at anything from subatomic to atom to a molecule, we're really focused sort of on a biochemical view of biology. And you'll see that we're going to spend time looking at that in this class, sort of looking at the chemical composition of life. Then once we have, so that what makes the molecule, why molecules are important is that we can then combine them to start to comprise the real components, yes, the living components of an organism. Starting with the organelle, yes? So following molecules, you should have organelle. And organelles are the small organs of a cell. Can you give me an example of an organelle? The mitochondria. The nucleus, yes. The cytoplasm, very good. All of those are examples of the organelles. Once we have organelles, we move into what? Organelles comprise a what? What's the next layer? The cell, very good. And the cell, you learn, is the smallest unit of life, yes? The smallest component that can live. And we're going to go over this today. It's the smallest unit that can live. Can anyone give me an example of a cell? Yes, Emma. A blood cell, yes. A plant cell. Daniel. A skin cell, yes. There are many, many examples of cells. Then we have cells, all have specialized function, you'll see, yes. Then we can group cells of the same function together. What is that called, Daniel? Tissue. So a tissue is comprised of many cells of the same type working together on a function. Can anyone give me an example of a tissue? Muscle tissue, another example. Skin tissue. Anybody else got something else? Organ, yes, any of the organ tissues. Very good. Then different tissues can be combined together to work together on one common function. What is that called? Is it time, right? Tom? Yes, time. An organ, very good. So we have an organ then. Anyone give me an example of an organ? The heart, yes. The brain, yes. Stomach, kidney, bladder, pancreas, yes. You're familiar, have you heard of any of these before? Yes, those are all organs. Okay. Organs can be put together to comprise, yes, and work together for what, yes? For the survival of one entity. What is that? What do we say when we have a composition of different organs working together for the survival of only one entity? Yes. Sarah, right? Organism, very good. So then we have organism. Excellent. Can anyone give me an example of an organism? Nate. A goldfish. Emma. Sunflower. Come here. Francesca. Pigs. Very good. Yes. We've come up with all different kinds of examples, hopefully, of organisms. From basically cell through organism, that's where we're going to spend a lot of our, yes, we'll spend a lot of cell biology, molecular biology, we'll spend a lot of time in that region, yes? We won't spend very much time looking at organs themselves, but we will definitely talk about them throughout our units. Then we started taking even broader. So up until now, we've been really sort of looking at one single organism, zooming out, zooming out, zooming out, always focus on one organism. Then biologists can actually start to look at collections of organisms together. Yes? So that's where we really have zoomed out. And we're looking not just at one organism, but a collection of organisms. What do we call a collection of organisms of the same species living in the same geographic area? Yes.
Population.
A population. So that's what's key, you guys. It's organisms of one species living together in the same geographic area. Okay? Can someone give me an example of a population? A flock of birds. Very good. Anything else? Lucian. A herd of sheep. Very good. Yes. The ants in an ant hill. Yes. School of fish. All of those represent a population. Very good. Okay. But oftentimes, do most populations live in isolation, do you think? No. Most, yes, all populations are actually coexisting with other different populations, yes? Organisms of different species, all sort of interacting in one geographic space. What do we call that level of organization? A community. Very good. So a community. So we go from population to a community. And a community represents different populations of different species interacting in one geographic location. Can someone give me an example of a community? Northside. Okay, Northside is a community of it. A farm. Very good. Yes. Okay, all of the organisms in the Amazon. Very good. What's your name? Okay, very good. What about a tree, you guys? Do you think a tree could be a community?
Yes.
Yes. Do you think there's a bunch of different organisms interacting there? Yes, most definite. What makes this, so what we're trying to talk about now is that all the way through the end is ecology, which is what we're going to be talking about starting our first unit here. What makes ecology sort of interesting is that you as a researcher can define how large your geographic space is. So you can say, I'm interested in the community that lives just in this tree right here, or I'm interested in the community of organisms that live in all of the trees located on Northside property. Make sense? You as a researcher can define the parameters of the size, which is nice. But we have to be aware of that when we start to investigate. Okay? Well, population and community are only concerned with sort of the living components of an area. Do these organisms interact with their environment? And do you think, can the environment influence in any way, can it have an effect on these organisms? Yes. So as a biologist, we would then need to be concerned, we can take that component into consideration as well. What level of organization do we have when we combine both the biological community and the sort of environmental components that surround it? What is that known as? Raphael. An ecosystem. Very good. So we can have an ecosystem. Can someone give me an example of an ecosystem? So it's considering both the biological and the environmental conditions. A river. Very good.
Coral reef.
Coral reef. Very good.
A tundra.
That's way too big.
Oh.
Yes, so hold on. That's okay. So a tundra is going to be too big. It's usually, an ecosystem is usually a smaller region. Yes? A pond. Very good. So that would be, so an ecosystem, a wetland. Yes? Any of that would be a smaller region. We consider the influence of, yes, we're taking the biological community into consideration along with the environmental conditions. Well, if we look at the Earth, yes, if we think about the Earth, Environmental conditions, meaning things like climate, yes, that's what we're really concerned with. Climate, do they tend to be similar in larger geographic regions? Like if I look at the Earth, okay, I don't have to have a globe in here. All right, I'll have to look for it. I don't know where it is.
There's a map over there.
What's that?
There's a map in the corner.
Yeah, no, but that's what I was going to say. Okay, if I consider, let's think of it this way. If I asked you, where do you think is the warmest regions on Earth? Where do you think that is found? Near the equator, right? So you have this idea. So then, as I start to move away from the equator, you guys, in either direction, north or south, remember that's just, there's really no such thing as north or south. It's just a way for us to keep track of it. As I start to move away from the equator, what starts to happen to the climate? Do you guys know? It gets cooler, right? So there are extreme, if I was looking for the warmest regions on Earth, I would go towards the equator. If I was looking for the coldest regions on Earth, where should I go? To the poles, right? So it's this gradation of climate. Does that make sense? So pretty much all the way around the Earth, in a certain region, there's like a belt. Does that make sense? Where you have similar climates. So if they have similar climates, do you think that those organisms are subject to similar environments then? What do you think? Yes, they would have to be. Yes, and they were not completely, but they're very similar characteristics. So we say you have an ecosystem as a small space, but if we consider all of the ecosystems that are subject to one, yes, climate in general, a collection of ecosystems subject to one climate, what is that called? That's the bios. That's a much larger geographic region. Can you give me an example of a bio and see if this will help? Emma. A desert. When you picture a desert, you guys, you have a very specific image in your head. Yes, what do you guys think of? Do you think palm trees and beaches? No, what do you think? Sand, dry, cactus. Yes, do certain things like that come to mind? Why? Well, that's a really broad region. Does that make all the places that you could think of a desert? Those are broad regions. That's a biome. Can someone give me something else? Another biome. Yes. The rainforest, another one. You gave me one earlier. The tundra, another one. The deciduous forest, the tropical rainforest. Yes, there's tons. We'll look at the biome. So a biome is a really large, it's a large collection of ecosystems subject to the same climate. And last but not least is the entire collection of biomes. Yes? Put together, where all of the spaces where organisms can live and survive and thrive, what do we call that? The biosphere. So for sure I expected you to have one example. One example is the biosphere. Okay? Earth, that's the only one for sure that we know of. Do we have some theoretical secondary biospheres? Mars, very good, yes.
This one, I made one there.
This
It's like Biosphere 2. I got that from another class. I from that one, and apparently I think it's man-made.
Oh, man-made. I think you said Mad Men.
No.
That's what I was like, how does Mad Men tie into this?
No,
Okay,
it's
sorry.
man-made, yeah.
Yeah, man-made. Oh, yeah. So I'm sure there. We can create. There has been, yes, attempts to create man-made works before. Who's the computer speaking? All right, so throughout the year, you'll see me, yes, we'll sort of be looking at, we sort of tend to start, we're going to start sort of the bottom of this pyramid with the first unit. We're going to start starting with basically communities and populations, communities, ecosystems, and biomes. That's where we're going to spend most of all of the first unit. And then we're going to actually reverse